Alright guys, welcome to the last episode of this season. A pretty intense race there in Monza. We ended up finishing and getting some points, but not enough points to really go anywhere within our championship. But yeah, so we're currently sitting in P11 for driver standings, and Unity Motorsports is sitting solid in P7 for the constructor standings. We're sitting at 10.8 million right now. But we're going to be saving a lot of that money for our facilities or whatever throughout the season break. But yeah, quick little update. We did have a message that our power unit upgrades came through per the facility. So we got some free power upgrades. And we also managed to get some more R&D points. So now we don't have that many parts at risk. So we have 3 parts under chassis, and then 5 parts under aero that are affecting us. So hopefully by the end of the last race, we can figure out what we're going to be doing with these parts. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying our best here with our new power upgrade here in the Yas Marina Circuit of Abu Dhabi. There it is. I forgot the name of it. It's there on the bottom left. I'm gonna see what our power unit can do for us, as a lot of our components are sitting pretty well under their track wear. But we'll see how we go, and we will see how we end here at the end of the race. A couple of these sponsors will, I believe only one sponsor will end, but I'm pretty sure we will renew them up to the beginning of the next season. Driver market's looking like it's a pretty slim chance of getting any newer drivers other than Dan Tictum, because he is sitting at 4 million. Next up is Gio Granu for 6 million, but we're basically gonna be working with him throughout the next season too, and rounding out the end of F1 22 into F1 23 and going from there. We'll explain our plans for that once the game comes out, and once we start playing that. So yeah, feeling pretty good so far coming into this last race, and let's go right into practice and see what we can do. Alright guys, we went through practice. It felt pretty good. Let's see if we can where can we go to view the track if we can. Messages. Alright, so Sector 1 was a little rough coming out of turn 1. That uphill section there, we had to make some front wing adjustments. We had to lift the wing just slightly, where we actually still had the traction going up the hill. But if we're not hitting the right angle, then we have the chance of spinning out there in Sector 1. So we made that adjustment. And then we're sitting at 1600 R&D points, so we're going to go ahead and go into aerodynamics and chassis and see what we can do on saving our parts. So we'll be right back. Alright, so that was pretty quick. We went in and we basically covered everything that we have for chassis. We have 92 R&D points, and we still have 4 components under aero that we're going to lose. But these are pretty cheap, so if we do have some time after the final race to get some more R&D points and adjust these, to adapt these, then we will, and hopefully we'll have enough credits to try and save them all. So we need 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, and probably 1200, 1300 credits there. So hopefully we'll have enough credits by the end of this race to save the rest of these parts. That way we can go into the second season with little to no adjustment when it comes to the performance comparison, as we're sitting there between Alpine and McLaren. Alpine actually sitting above McLaren. If they haven't before, I haven't noticed it till now, but yeah. So let's get right back into qualifying. All right, so into Q1, both myself and our teammate of Daniel Ticktum makes it into Q2. Dan Ticktum with a 126.1, and I have a 126.05. And feeling pretty good, Dan Ticktum. Hopefully it's not a fluke. Hopefully you can get a higher position in Q2 if we can make it through Q2 into Q1. But yeah. Both Hasses, both Aston Martins, one Alfa Romeo and two Williams. So, well, actually one Haas did make it through, that of Mick Schumacher. So, yeah. Lineup's looking pretty good. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez split by myself in P7 and P9. And, Ferrari of Charles Leclerc taking the provisional P1 with a 1:25.60 fastest time so far. Let's go ahead and see what qualifying 2 can do for us. Alright, so I don't know how I did it. May have been told from the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda, but I did a double lap strat and I got a 125.5, but the initial lap was the faster lap, so 125.5, and Lewis Hamilton came up and beat me by that by a 0.2 of a second. And provisional second place, the highest position that we've gotten so far in qualifying that I do remember. But yeah, we make it into Q3. Dan Ticktum qualifies in P12. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton P1, myself P2, Sergio Perez P3 for qualifying 2. So we're going to go to the final shootout and we're going to see what we can do about saving a set of soft tires for the final race. So let's get into the final shootout.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top 3 today. Norris, Verstappen, and George Russell. With qualifying wrapped up now, we have our grid lineup for the big race tomorrow. Be sure to join us then for what will no doubt be a fantastic race.
All right, so we rounded out at P8 with a 125.4. We tried to do a double run on the same set of softs, but we didn't improve on the second lap. We tried to towards the beginning of the lap, but there was just a lot of time lost there that we couldn't regain. So Lando Norris starting in P1 for the final race of the season. Max Verstappen close behind. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz P5 and P6, so they're already sitting good for the end of the season. So Charles Leclerc is sitting at 137, so he's got to finish in front of Max Verstappen. He's basically got to get up high enough in a position where Max Verstappen, if Max Verstappen does win, he could take that championship away from him. But yeah. But for the constructor standings, another 24 points between Red Bull and Ferrari. So it's anybody's game because Ferrari and Red Bull are both up there for starting the grid. Red Bull actually starting better than Ferrari, so we might see an undercut from Ferrari. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. So let's get to the race.
It's time then for one final race in this year's Formula One World Championship. 2010 saw 4 drivers in contention for the title coming into this race, with Sebastian Vettel prevailing to become the youngest world champion to date. Is there one last sting in the tail awaiting us today? Well, it's time to find out, here at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The Yas Marina Circuit is made up of 3.28 miles of track, featuring 16 corners with 2 very long straights. DRS zones going into the heavy braking zones of both turn 5 and turn 7 offer plenty of potential for overtaking. The circuit comes with its fair share of tricky corners, which will certainly test a driver's braking management. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Johnson lines up on pole position, and P2 goes to Daniel Ricciardo, a strong showing from the Australian. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Tictum, George Russell, they've taken a grid penalty, and Ocon. Fernando Alonso, Albon, Sainz, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty, and Lewis Hamilton. Tsunoda, they've taken a grid penalty, Bottas, Pierre Gasly, and Mick Schumacher. Magnussen, Joe, Nicholas Latifi, and Max Verstappen. Vettel, Perez, Stroll, and Charles Leclerc completes today's grid order. And now it's time to head down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Okay, now that we've got some good points on the board, let's continue this form and aim for another top 10 finish.
All right, so a major upset there. A lot of people having grid penalties. I knew there were going to be some grid penalties, but I did not expect myself and our teammate Tictum being in the top 5 start. So we're going to be going. I don't know why the personalized is having me go a lap early, but can I run the softs? All right, we're gonna go ahead and see what we can do about editing the stint, and we'll get back to you.
Superb parking there, mate. Let's make sure we get the edge on the surrounding drivers as the lights go out. Keep an eye on the lights. The start sequence will begin as soon as the grid is formed. Be ready with the clutch.
All right, guys, here we are with our 5 red lights on the final race of the season, and we actually see Lance Stroll parked sideways a couple spaces back, making him have about a 2-second gap off the start. So that's the first real glitch we really seen in F1 22, knowing that there's plenty of other stuff that we've heard about throughout F1 22. But pretty good start. We're still holding on strong against Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris and McLaren's, as Daniel Tictum is still about a half second, just under a full second behind us, holding off from P4, as the Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris and the McLaren's are side by side. They're still fighting for position, but they are holding on strong in P2 and P3 here, as we're coming along the back straights. Coming through practice, I realized that the first and last chicanes were gone, and that surprised me a lot more than it should have, because I was expecting those chicanes, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? And so that's why some of our first few laps were a little rough trying to learn these new curves. As you can see, this is one long left-hander into Sector 3 here. And we're still holding about a 0.2 of a second ahead. Now 0.3, 0.4. Trying to gain as much time as we can through these corners. We're doing a little bit better than we did earlier this season with the street circuits. But Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris are still able to hold off strong and keep up with us. And that's basically going to round out lap 1, as there's not very many position changes here at the start of the race here in Abu Dhabi. We're going to be moving on to lap 4 now. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris still holding strong, as Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are now P4 and P5. You see Daniel Ricciardo tries to make a move on us on the outside. We almost go 3 wide into this last corner to round out the end of Sector 2. And we're still holding on strong to P1. 4 laps into this race. We're trying to hold as best as we can against the McLarens, as we're holding provisional pole here for the last race of the season. And seeing the Mercedes come out pretty well was a surprise as well, as it's myself, McLaren, and then Mercedes, it's Esteban Ocon. Moving on to the next lap of lap 5, we're actually going to be side by side with Lando Norris as Daniel Ricciardo dropped back. He holds the inside line, and we're taking the outside to try to keep our speed up. And it was about this time that we were told that we have an engine issue in our car, and there is the smoke telling us that we have a DNF through a mechanical failure. And you can see from that double right-hander, we made contact with the McLaren of Lando Norris. And here's the onboard. A little bit of tire contact here as we go up to the double right. That's when our engine goes out, and we try to move to the inside. He takes out our front wing, and we take out his front wing as well. It's going to be a DNF for both myself and the McLaren of Lando Norris, I believe. And that's going to round out the end of the season, as it does bring out a yellow flag safety car, with the McLaren split between the Mercedes to start the green flag after they get our cars out of the way. So that's going to be some way to end our season.
Coaster season, but they can go into the winter with their heads held high after an emphatic victory here today. Tell me out, how do they manage to achieve this win?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out on track was: speed. I know it sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our winner.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it. Well, not the result our points leader would have wanted, but it certainly makes things interesting going forward. So, Anthony Davidson, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
Well, for me, it's got to be Lewis Hamilton. The multiple world champion may be the boring choice at this point, but you can't argue that he's a driver deserving of his reputation.
So then, Ferrari have now moved out of sight and out of reach. It's another triumph for the Italian team as they claim the World Constructors' Championship. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right, not very an eventful finish for us here at the last race of the season in Abu Dhabi. But hey, Daniel Ticktum scores 4 points for Unity Motorsports, finishing in P8, so his debut points at the last race of the season. So yeah, and Charles Leclerc finishing out the season with 137 points in front of Max Verstappen, 6-point difference. I decided not to show the Charles Leclerc burnouts because the smoke on the tires weren't showing, so I don't know which settings that was. I'll have to look through the settings, see if I can bump those up. But yeah, Unity Motorsports finishing in P7 for the constructor standings with a total of 35 points. So pretty good midfield look and see what we have. Daniel Tickton bumping up to P17 for the driver standings, getting him 4 points for the season, and leaving 4 people, both Williams, 1 Aston Martin, and 1 Haas, with no points for this season. So, yeah, that's basically gonna be it for this episode. We're gonna go through and see what we can do about saving those components, and we'll let you guys know in the preseason video for the next season, which will be coming up here pretty soon. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this short season, and we are going to be going ahead and doing another 10 race season before F1 23 comes out. It will overlap into F1 23, but that's fine. It gives me time to record some Breaking Point and then upload those once I am done with this series. So thank you guys for sticking around. If you guys have first saw this is the first video you guys have watched, then yeah. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.